Good morning guys, thanks very much for stopping by. We're in front of the Pajero yet again, and today we're going to be installing the Android head unit into the Pajero. I've got an old Eclipse unit which is probably about 10 years old, and whilst it is still working reasonably well, it's old technology. It does have GPS functionality, but unfortunately I need to get a map update and they want to charge me about $180 to do so. The Android unit that you see here, which is a pumpkin unit, that one cost me around about $330 delivered. As you can imagine, for an extra $140 odd, I've got a brand new unit and one that's going to have a lot more functionality, and it's going to be a lot more update and give me heaps more flexibility around my mapping and forward driving off-road stuff. Now once we've got it installed, which is the purpose of the video today, I'll come back and I'll do a follow-up review and let you know how I'm finding it and let you know whether it works, if there's any issues. As said in my previous video, which is an introduction and basically a quick review of what's in the box, link up there and down in the description. That's going to give you an idea of the specifications of this specific unit, and I'll quickly just pop the specs up there across the top of the screen so you can get an idea of what we're looking at. But today's video is basically about the installation in the Pajero, so let's jump in and we'll get started. Come along and have a look. So as you can see, the first thing we're doing is just popping this section out here. Now I am just using a screwdriver. I do have some proper tools around somewhere, but they are buried in the shed. And this is a really straightforward sort of project as far as getting into this section here, where the stereo itself is, and removing this. If we needed to start removing other sections of the dash, like over here, and removing this sort of trim and getting into there, which we may need to do later on, depending on how we're going to route some cables and whether some of the existing stuff plugs into the new stuff, you know, or some of this trim that you see over here, then I'd go and get the appropriate tools, most likely anyway. But for now, the easiest thing to do, just get under here and just leave this section out. Now I do have a complete video on pulling the whole dash out. There's actually a series of 3 videos which will show you how to pull the dash out, you know, get in behind the glove box and just remove the whole section. So if that becomes a requirement for you for an install, which it shouldn't do, all your wiring is going to be in the back here, but if you want to do that, then there's a link up the top right hand corner there, the card there, and I'll put a link down in the description to all of those videos, so that might help you out there. With that in mind, I'm going to keep the dash disassembly sections fairly limited, because you can go over and have a look at those videos if you need more detail. There's wires hanging on the back of these, so just reach in, into the back and unclip the wires that are attached. Pushing down on the little clips, and they'll pop straight out. When you're pulling the vents out, and you've got 3 clips, one in this corner, one here, and one here. So when you're getting them and pulling them out, just lever around near those clips and they should pop straight out for you. Now that we've got that out, we are just going to grab this whole unit, hand either side, and just pull. And you'll see that it's just going to come out. This is some of the fascia stuff that the previous guy had put in, so we're going to remove that. Bit of a bodgy job, but we may actually need to use some of that later on. Once you pull this section, there is again a wire at the top there. Just to reach around, unplug that whole top unit, which is the unit that has all your mileage and all your details there. That's going to come out. That's one unit, and that's the surround for the stereo there, so we may need to make an adjustment to that. We'll figure it out as we go. We'll just grab the fascia out just to see what we're looking at as far as fitment. As far as fitment goes to the original, so it is going to be a bit narrower, so we're going to need something to tidy that up a little bit on the outside, make it not look as obvious. And I think we might have a bit of a height issue there as well. But with regards to removing this main unit, these are similar to the Tritons, I've been told, but I'm not 100% sure there. But you just got 2 screws. You've got one on this side and one on this side, and this whole unit is going to pull out. This is a screw here, and this is the bracket that's going to be holding onto our double DIN unit. So in theory, these holes that are on this are going to line up with the holes that are on the new unit, because it should be standard double DIN. And they should just line up, and we should just be able to drop it in there and slot back in, and jobs are good, and fingers crossed. Now if you own a Pajero and you want to do any rattle reduction, here's a good time to get in and put some extra tape on your wires, etc., and basically just push them away from some of the paneling that they might rattle on. That's the cause of some of the issues and some of the rattling in some of the Pajero dashes. So screws out, and this whole thing's just going to pull forward, and we are going to have a rat's nest of wires here at the back. Now this is the wiring that's in the back. This is from a previous install. I'm not responsible for this, otherwise I would have left myself a little bit more room to move as far as wiring goes. But I'm just going to unplug all of this from the back of the stereo, and we'll have a look and we'll see what we're working with as far as fitment and plugs, etc. What wires we're going to have to separate and redo. So there's our old one on the bottom, new one on top. You can see that is probably just a little bit wider as far as the screen goes, but as far as width of the actual units, these look like they're going to be a pretty good match, I think. So again, just hoping that those holes line up. Should just be able to mount that straight in. Does look to be just that little bit taller there as well, but not by much. I think we're going to be fine here. Now your mileage is going to vary here, depending on whether you're doing a previous install or whether you're doing the original OEM install. We'd have to assume that this bracketry is going to be the same. It's going to mount to the front and to the side of your stereo. So just remove as many screws as you need. On the other side. When you take these off, if you forget which way they go, they are marked, and I'm not sure if you can see that, but it says LH, so it's going to go on the left hand side of our unit. Having a look at the side of that, it's not an exact match. We are pretty close to all those holes there. If we line one up, the other one doesn't line up. If we go to that top one, the others don't line up. But that's, I suppose, going to give us a little bit of variation, a little bit of adjustment in our mounting. So we're just going to pick one and then slap it in the dash and just see what it looks like. This is a piece of advice after doing this a number of times now. Check your mounting first, make sure that it's all going to fit, because if you go and start cutting all your wires and unplugging everything and plugging everything else back in, only to find that when you go to fit your stereo in your dash and the hole and it just doesn't fit, you've got to go back and do all that wiring. So just check for fitment first and then see how you go. You can see here we're just fitting double din for double din. There may be some slight variations in the sizing, but we're going to have to see how this fascia sits. Those are the parts that usually need adjustment. But you can see on this side we've got a nice clean fit as well. No issues underneath as far as height. And it is just a fit as far as depth wise. We're going to have to pack these wires in the back, but that's going to look okay. Now, as per my previous advice, I'm just going to grab this fascia here. And we're just going to drop that over the top and see what that looks like. Okay. So you can see we've got an issue as far as height goes. We're going to see what we can wrangle there. It's a little bit, it just seems to be sitting up just a little bit high. We'll see what we can do there. Just going to have another look at these screws to see with any of those bring it down any lower. Back these screws off just a little bit. Just enough to allow us to get some movement on here. Stick it back in and we'll just see whether we can make an adjustment through that movement and whether they can get that, and whether we can get that to fit. Unfortunately we can't go too far because the rear of the radio is hitting on that. That is just plastic though, so we can do what we need to with that. We can get the grinder out if we have to get that right angle. I think from a dash perspective that's probably the angle we want to go with, but we'll see whether we can work with that now. So just in case you're wondering, I had a quick look at the bracketry that comes with the unit itself, and you'll see that these holes aren't a match for these ones here on the original, albeit that would have given us a bit more flexibility. So depending on your install, these will probably be perfect and give you some adjustment up and down and backwards and forwards, but they're not going to work in this install, unfortunately. So I've decided we're a pretty close fit as far as getting it through that slot in the front of the fascia there. What I want to do is just take a little bit of this plastic out here so we can tilt that down, and I'll try and take some of the material out the back here before I start messing about with the fascia, because obviously once we cut into that, there's really no turning back. Unfortunately, I've lost a piece of my Dremel, which allows me to hold on to the tiny little cutting discs, so we're going to use the big grinder. Hopefully it's going to give us the ability to get in and just take a little bit off there and give us something to work with. Now, I don't want to be wielding this inside the car, certainly up in behind the dash, but I've got no option at this point. So that's the section we've cut out. Take it little by little. I think we may need to take more, but less is better for now. Try and get a little bit more off this corner here. This one's not too bad. I might just go to a hand tool now and just tidy that up. So I've just got a serrated knife here, just one of my folding knives. It's in that corner, just cutting a little bit more away. You can see it's fairly flexible, it's fairly soft, so it's going through that okay. Now we've taken quite a bit more off there, we'll see how we go now. You'll see we've got plenty of wiggle room at the back there now to get a bit of angle, and we'll see what happens. So we've gone with some slightly higher holes, and I'm just test fitting this again just so I can show you what it looks like. We can see we've got a reasonable fit there across the top, and we are sitting out a little bit, but that's going to be okay. Probably can get our angle up a little bit more. Bottom is going to come up, as you can see, once we refit the aircon controls, so that'll be okay. And that should force everything into place. Unfortunately, the fascia that goes out of the top isn't really going to cover anything, so we will use the stuff that we pulled out from the previous install. So now it's time for the rubbish part, which is sorting out all of this. In theory, most of our wires are still going to match up. I'm going to pull all these wires up for our amplifier, and we'll get those separated and put to one side because we know what they are, and we'll come back. What I'm going to do, just to simplify things for myself, is you can see that this is the output, which is going to the amplifier, which is under the passenger seat there, and currently they're still labelled. Now if I start pulling those apart, I'm going to lose my connections, and I'm not going to know which plug is going to which speaker for the car. You know, I can always get under and change it on the amp, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take them out one at a time, and I'm going to plug them into the new harness, and that way we're not going to lose any connections, and we're going to know exactly what goes where. Then we'll just flick this to the side and we'll be good to go on to the next thing. These are actually our outputs here for our amplifier, so you can see front right, rear right, etc, etc. So we're going to plug those. That's our cables running over to our amp over the back. These other ones here appear to be inputs of some description, so it does say VTR in, that one's L in, R in. Now there was some additional inputs obviously that stereo could have taken, so that must be what they are, and I'm going to show if I can trace these and find out where they go. I think these were connected to the original OEM system, but we'll trace those and we'll see where they go, but they're not going to be needed for now. Like the previous installer had done, as I'm installing my RCA plugs, I just take a little bit of electrical tape, just put it on nice and tight, and then just wrapping it around that join. Now that's not doing anything. These don't need to be insulated at all. It's just giving it some mechanical strength so they don't pull out when we're, you know, refitting and all that sort of stuff. So as you'll see, we've done that to all of those connections there. It's no different to what they've done on the previous install. So I saw that, liked it, thought I'd do it again. Fortunately, I think that's our microphone there, which means it's going to be a phono socket, which means that's not going to be a fit either. So we're going to need to do some wire routing there. I was hoping to avoid that, but c'est la vie. Just trying to get some separation here and try and figure out what's going where. Now these are all saying in. That's an out, it's an R in. I think the car used to have possibly a CD changer, which may explain those. Also some other control lines here, which aren't exactly self-explanatory. But we have disconnected that part of the harness, so I might just stuck that down the back there somewhere and get that out of the way. I don't think that's required, but I don't want to start cutting into things just yet. Okay, so that's our speakers done. These are our video outs. We want to run some monitors over the back there or something like that. We don't. This one here is obviously for our rear reversing camera, so we're going to unplug that there. I've got just the cam wire, the reversing camera just plugged in, so that's good to go. That gets triggered over the back, but unfortunately you can see what they've done here. This is what the previous installer has left me to work with, so this is going to be a bit of a shit fight, to be honest. I'm going to have to try and decode some of these wires. Luckily most of the wires are going to be a match up for what we've got, and then we're going to have to patch into those. And like I said in the video yesterday, I figured we're going to have to cut that ISO plug out and just hardwire it in, and that's going to be the case. It's going to be tight, but that's what we're going to have to do. Now to match up some of those wires, what I've needed to do is go and just find the wiring diagram for the older clips that was in there, just so I can match up the colours, because I'm concerned that they're not an exact match and I'm just not real sure. Generally as a rule for stereos, you can be fairly confident that most of your colours are going to be the same. You know, your blue is going to go to your amp remote, your yellow is going to be your constant, your orange is going to be for your lights, for the dimmer, red's positive, next ground, black's ground, all that sort of stuff. But there's often an individual coding of the wires that you need to be aware of. So just to make sure that I am matching them all up correctly, I'm going to jump in and just have a quick look and then start putting some of these crimps on the actual other harness there. So we've committed to pulling this harness apart. We're not going to use the ISO plug. These are all your speakers, your speaker level output here. We're not going to use those, so we're just going to cut those off flush and then we'll tape those up. We do need to use all of these ones on this side though. So we need to cut all of these out. We don't need to worry about where they go to, but we're just going to cut them. Trying to give us as much length as possible. Now I do like to just grab those once I've cut them off and just pull on the shielding just a little bit when you're done. Just stretches it over, make sure there's no exposed wire, but we will tape those up. Have yourself plenty of Leco tape handy, or electrical tape for those not in Australia. Just call it a bit of lecky tape. I always like to just cut it off. Just makes for a cleaner finish. So that's all of those speaker wires that we've taped up that we're not going to be using. So realistically, these are all the ones that we need to worry about. Obviously we need to route the GPS and the Wi-Fi antenna, but these are all we've got left. So, and we're not even going to use some of those. We don't need to use the brown ones. Those are for our steering wheel controls, which we don't have. All up, we've got about 8 more wires to go, and then route the GPS and the Wi-Fi connector there. Normally give those a good twist rather than just pushing them together like that and then sort of twisting them around. But again, we've got fairly narrow shrink wrap, so we want to keep that as tiny as possible. So we'll solder that up. And when you're soldering, you don't need to put the solder on the iron itself. You actually can apply it to the wire that you're trying to solder, get a bit of heat in it, and then just touch it to the wire. And that'll make sure that that wire's soaking up that solder there. Make sure the heat's gone out of that before we try and push the shrink wrap over it. And that's going to work fine. We'll go around and heat shrink all these when we're done. This one is going to be our amplifier. So this is blue and white. That's going to be our amp. And when I say amp, I mean this is just the remote control on. And when you're doing this, try and have a look at where the wires need to go. Because basically you don't want to end up getting them all tangled up. If you can get them all installed right, and hopefully, you know, depending on where the wires are coming from over the back there, you can have them sort of, you know, looking nice and tidy, not being all tangled, and it makes your life a whole lot easier. Now one thing I'm noticing here on the wires from the Android head unit is they're very, very thin. They obviously save dollars everywhere they can, but they're quite a bit thinner than I expected them to be. Orange is your illumination, or the one that goes to your headlights. So when you turn your headlights on, that actually dims the light on your stereo or whatever it is that you're installing. You don't need too much solder, just a dabble, do you? This yellow one has to be a permanent 12 volt, so this needs to go straight to the battery or have a permanent power supply, because this is what keeps all your memories and your time and your date and all that sort of stuff stored. So yellow one is something that's always on. So this one's going to be tough, it's going to be right in there. So this is why sometimes it's just not fun to follow somebody else on an install. It's often better to be the first person in here rather than trying to figure out what the last bloke's done. Or anytime you do an install, best advice, leave yourself as much wire as possible, give yourself room. If you've ever got to do the job again, consider about what you can do this job to make that next job just that little bit easier. So give yourself a little bit of extra wire, route your wires good, label things if you need to, just do that sort of stuff. Otherwise, you know, you end up like this, you just don't know what's going where, and not leaving yourself enough wire to come back and make your job easier next time you got to do it. This one's our yellow, so you're going to see, because they haven't left as much wire there, that's now going to take that all the way in there, and it's going to make it a bit of a pain in the backside. That's going to be the last one, because if we wire that in now, this is going to be up in here like this, and it's just going to be so much harder to work on all the rest of the wire. So we're going to leave that one till last. In retrospect, I should have left it and not cut it just yet. For safety's sake, what we're going to do is just put a little bit of tape on that. Just cover it up so it doesn't make any contact with any metal and cause us a short. Okay, so that's the harness done. All we've got left in that is the ground and the positive, the one that's on the accessories. I've got a feeling there's a joint in there, so we're going to take that off and clean that up. Get this positive sorted out. Now we have no concerns though that this is live, because it's not, because the car is switched off. This one only becomes active when the car accessories are turned on. Red one has to go to your accessories and maintain the 12 volt when the car actually gets turned on. So you need to put this somewhere to an accessories point or route it straight to your fuse box, and make sure you connect up to something that gets 12 volt when your accessories are turned on. So basically just got the positive here, positive with accessories in the red, yellow is positive always on, and then we've obviously got the ground we need to sort out here as well. We need to connect it up to something that's given us a signal or a positive. We're actually in reverse. Luckily the old one had one, and I remember having to reroute this because I had to troubleshoot the reversing camera. So I know this goes back to the reverse light over the back. We'll connect that one up. The other thing that we've got here, according to the manual of the Eclipse, is a white and red one. Now according to this, white and red go to the parking brake signal. Now I don't know whether we need that or not, but I haven't cut that off. So I have that there, but I have put a bit of shrink wrap around that one and the brake signal one that goes to the reverse, just so that keeps them together. So in future reference, if I need it, I know which one it is. Obviously we've given these a bit of a twist, give them some sort of mechanical strength in addition to the electrical connection that we're going to get out of the solder. In addition to having a nice good electrical connection, we've got a decent mechanical connection there as well. And by mechanical, it just means how it's joined, how it's holding on together. So forgetting that it's got electrical current running through it, if you had to pull on it, how strong would it be and what are the chances of it breaking? That's what we're talking about when we say mechanical strength. So the twisting gives it mechanical strength. The solder gives it another level of mechanical strength in addition to making a better electrical connection. And then obviously we're going to bring that shrink wrap down and put it over that, heat it up, and that's going to give it another level of mechanical strength, and obviously offer us protection from an electrical perspective. Okay. So our ground connection is a bit shit over the back here, so I need to give that a bit of a tidy up. And the good news is our ground is a little bit thicker in there, which is exactly what we want. This is the moment of truth. We've got all those wires wired up and all the shrink wrap shrunk. So we're about to turn on the accessories and we'll see what happens. Fingers crossed, eh? Alright, since the radio come on. That's good news. We've got something on the screen. And I think the first boot up takes quite a while, I believe. So we'll just see what this does here. Still got the cover on the screen there as well. Looks a reasonable brightness. Wow, look at that. I didn't plug in the amplifier lead, so let's go on, just drop this out again, and we'll plug in the amplifier harness, and we'll try this all again. Okay, I'm going to need to get rid of this screen so I can actually see what's going on. Oh, very nice, very shiny, a little bit reflective. You've actually got to turn the radio on and off. So we'll touch it, turn her on. And it's picked up as hit 109, so it's obviously picking up the digital signal. Go into EQ. I need to be careful here as far as playing music because we don't want to get a copyright. Well, I can tell you, it definitely sounds good. It sounds nice and crisp. Definitely got to do something about this annoying volume sound. So settings, system, about, let's say Android version 8. PX5 model. We'll look at doing some updates later on. This is just operating exactly the same as you would your Android tablet. So drag down from the top to get a menu, touch and hold. Here's our Wi-Fi at home. So touch, we get a keyboard, turning an IP address. Not the greatest signal, but I haven't connected in the wire at the back. Alright, beautiful, and we are connected. So a bit of crackling through the speakers there, but we'll worry about that later on. So interesting, even with that turned off, I think you can hear that. We're getting some interference through our speakers, so that's going to be annoying. Now I did turn the car off, and as soon as I turn it back on, I'm starting to get that noise through the speakers. It almost sounds like a radio or something. As soon as I start to turn it up, a little bit of a scratch there. We might have a play with the amplifier gain and see whether we can get rid of that. I'm just going to stick it in reverse, and you'll see our reverse camera works. I don't think you can see that particularly well because of the reflection. That's just a standard eBay camera. over the top of the number plate, so I didn't get this additional, and that's working fine. So take it out of reverse, back in. Yeah, that's perfect, and I think that's much better than the other screen that I had as well. It's certainly going to be a higher resolution.
Yes, Brad.
Hello, Stephen. What are you doing? Quick question, mate. I've just installed this Android device, Android head unit, and I'm just using the mic that's actually in the stereo itself rather than routing one. How's that sound? Is that all right?
Yeah, you come through very clear.
Very clear. Okay. Is it loud enough, etc.?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. As far as AM goes,
Members and leader.
perfect signal. Okay, so we've got it installed. We've had a bit of a play with it. Installed some additional apps. I haven't found this Wi-Fi antenna to be much chop at all. I was moving it around, hanging outside the window. Granted, we're probably about half a house away from the modem, but I can pick that up fair enough on my phone. This doesn't seem to be making too much difference. We're still going to route it and sort that out. We just need to route our GPS antenna, get that up on the dash. So I'm about to do that now. Just going to take it out through the side there, up over the glove box, down the back, and then up that side and just stick it up on the dash behind where we've got that vent there at the moment. I'm just routing the microphone up the top there, and I've just taken off the inside piece of trim. Literally just 2 bolts, one there, which you'll find inside the handle. There's a couple of caps on that. One on top, one on bottom. Take those off, you'll find a Phillips head screw in each. Then you can just grab that trim and peel it down. Route that wire down there and under the dash here and across over to the stereo unit itself. While I'm here and I'm routing cables, one thing I wanted to check was if this was plugged into one of the USB ports. Just wanted to make sure the phone was going to be taking a charge whilst it's plugged into that, and the good news is it does. I don't know how quickly it would charge the phone. It's probably only maybe an amp or something like that, maybe not even. But the good news is it supplies power. Normally my phone would sit up in its cradle up in the top right hand corner here, thereabouts, and that's where it's going to go back. So what I've always wanted to do was route some 12 volt supply over here so I could actually plug it in, whether it be USB or whatever the case was going to be. So I could actually charge it from here, or have it in its cradle and have it on charge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to route one of those USB plugs over here, just bring it up the corner in the back of the dash, and I can run that straight up there, same as we've done there, and that'll go into the phone. So we'll have a permanent supply there, so if I need to resort to hotspotting the phone, it'll be on at power and won't be sucking the battery on me. You can see it just runs around the corner and she's going to come out the front there, which is going to be absolutely perfect. Okay, so we're up to routing the GPS and the antenna wire, the Wi-Fi antenna. Now don't get ahead of yourself. Go and stick this somewhere, check how long your wire is and go and stick it somewhere, and then run that back to the radio itself, because then you're only pushing these little things through gaps and holes. Whereas if you go the other way around and you connect it to the back of the stereo, you're going to be trying to push this thing through holes. So don't fall for it. Go the other way around, mount your antenna, make sure you've got enough cable, obviously, for where you want to route it, and go and mount these, then run your cable back to the stereo. That's what we're doing now. And again, we've just gone the inside, popped off that inside trim there, and we'll take this section off here as well, and then we'll run all our stuff down here. Okay, so what I've found here is if I route the cables down here in the back, rather than having to go all the way down and under the glove box and across, what I've done is just come down the back here, and there's a little hole just there. I did try levering this part of the panel out and get it in the back, but then there's another section on the other side that kind of gets sandwiched in the middle. But if you just stuff your cords through here, they're a small enough gauge, and as you'll see, that panel goes back on, no problems at all. So we're going to route in through here, and that'll just save us a little bit of messing about, and then we can just run them in up over the top there of the glove box and up to the stereo there. And if you feed that down, you're going to see it just up there. So if you just feed it through, keep going, you'll see she pops down. I think you can see it just there. So we'll reach in, we'll grab that, pull it out, run it across. And just to save you pulling the glove box out, because if you actually route through this section here, which you can easily do, you're actually going to be inside the glove box. So when you go to take all this out, all your wires are going to get caught on the glove box. So don't do that. Go up the back there where you've got your aircon, and that's where your cabin filter and all that is in there. So going up through the back there is reaching through this air vent. It's pretty tight, and up over the back corner of that air vent, and you'll actually be able to put your hands and touch two hands. You need fairly small hands to do it. I've probably got a medium size, although I'm a large glove. But you can route that wire up the back without actually coming through the glove box and grab it and take that straight to the back of the radio, and that's going to save you, one, it's going to save you having to pull the glove box out, and if you ever have to pull the glove box off or out to get the dash out, you don't need to be undoing all these cables and pulling those cables out to drop the glove box. So avoid going through the glove box, drop the glove box so you can get to access to the back, but don't route it through any of the holes in the glove box, otherwise you'll regret that when it comes time to pull it out. Wi-Fi antenna, we've just stuck up there on the front of the passenger side. There's our sun visor, it's going to be up there behind the sun visor, routed up down the side. Also rerouted some wire for our dash cam, so it's a bit tidier. With our phone back in the corner there as well, which is where it'll be mounted. We've got our USB plug down in the corner here, which I'm about to plug in and use for the phone. Our phone plugged into the USB there. That cord's routed down along that trim and under the mat. So that appears to work very well. And we're done. So I think I might have a look at investing in the new frame. We'll do that later on down the track. But for now, this is good enough for testing. It doesn't look any better or any worse than the previous install, with the exception that it is bending this bit of plastic down here. You can see we've ended up with gaps on both corners because it's pushing that down. At least it's balanced. It looks the same on both sides. So we're going to be happy with that for now. I could always cut that out to make that fit or take a little notch out. But if I can buy an appropriate fascia online, I'll keep an eye out for one for Mitsubishi, and you know, assuming that I'm okay with this and everything works okay, which I'll report on future videos, then we'll keep it. So for now, I'm going to go and start having a play with this. I'm going to go and try some mapping. So I'm going to take it for a quick drive, make sure everything's working, and just see how we go. Alright guys, thanks very much. Obviously, if you've got any questions or any comments or anything along those lines, feel free to drop me a line, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can, or help out with whatever I'm able to. Thanks guys, we'll catch you on the next one.